Communist Party welcomed the first majority Labour government in 1945. But when that government veered off course to attack working class living standards and trade union rights, the CP went into action.
The national dock strikes of 1948 and 49 brought anti-Soviet and anti-communist hysteria to Britain.
It's hard to resist the glib promises of agitators. Money doesn't go far today. And because they didn't grow up with the unions like their fathers, they're easily swayed. The unions succeeded because men gave them loyalty. Today, the thoughtless betray their leaders. £900 million of imports and exports pass through Liverpool each year. Stand still at the docks could bring Britain to her knees. And that is what communism wants.
Solidarity strikes overwhelmed the trial of communist dockers leaders in 1951, helping to kill off the wartime ban on strikes in essential industries. But still, hundreds of communists were purged in the civil service and the power stations. TUC and Labour Party diktats banned CP members from elected positions in unions and trades councils and denounced so-called communist front organisations like the Labour Research Department.
I was then a chairman, a lay official, elected chairman of the Transport and General Worker Union Dock branch. I was its official chairman. Then I was confronted with a form to sign, that I would resign my membership to the Communist Party and I could then hold my position as a lay official or any future vacancies for other positions. And of course I, and the greater numbers I know of the Communist Party refused to sign that form.
Nevertheless, unions such as the miners, the fire brigades, the boiler makers and furniture makers elected communist leaders.
So did the National Union of Teachers, whose presidents, GCT Giles and Max Morris, together with academic Brian Simon, led the argument for comprehensive education, later joining forces with Caroline Benn.
Communist leadership in the ETU secured unprecedented terms, conditions and union facilities for electricians and apprentices. But under pressure from ruthless employers, the mass media, the TUC and disgruntled ex-communists, some party members adopted the same kind of ballot rigging practices as the right wing. The Communist Party condemned these activities, which gave reactionaries the excuse to ban communists and socialists from elected office.
In the 1950s and 60s, the fascists tried to march on our streets again. Communists helped found the anti-fascist journal Searchlight. And the Communist Party used its influence among the dockers to combat Enoch Powell's racist scaremongering in 1968. Communists worked closely with their Asian, African and Caribbean comrades in Britain to launch the campaign against racist laws, organising big national demonstrations.
The Labour government's white paper, in place of strife, set out to shackle shop floor trade unionism. In response, the CP and its allies launched the Liaison Committee for the Defence of Trade Unions, uniting militant workers and leaders at every level.
Its fighting resistance helped sink the plan, laying the basis for an even bigger fight against Tory legislation.
In 1970, the general election saw the return of a Tory government. This government introduced an industrial relations bill. It resolved to deal with trade unions and with strikes, official and unofficial. What it tried to do was what the Tory government under Thatcher took 8 pieces of legislation to do. It tried to do the whole lot in one.
There are those who say that in this government bill that there are some good things, like the rights to appeal on unfair dismissal. But what does it say when you look at it? The unfair dismissal, a dismissal will be fair if an employer has acted reasonably. He can dismiss the employee, if, for example, for redundancy, his capabilities or his conduct. Now, can you tell me any militant steward in this country who couldn't be dismissed on redundancy, capability and conduct?
By this time, communists were in the vanguard of industrial battles everywhere.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, not by taking. The Tories are his party. We shall not be moved.
The working at Upper Clyde shipbuilders saved the yard.
The shop stewards representing the workers are in control of this yard. Nobody and nothing will come in, and nothing will go out without our permission. The security officers have been told that and they accept it. We'll take the decisions.
Striking engineers defied the law. A mass action freed London dockers leaders from Pentonville prison, overthrowing the 1971 Industrial Relations Act.
We're not Nazi victims yet. We're free trade unions. Hold your banners up. Hold yourselves on the law. We are the working class. And we're going to get 5 comrades out of that concentration camp. Everyone rose up in defence of what we fought for hundreds of years. And that's the right of the working man. At every side to determine his destiny. The 5 of us was put in by a political call. And it was the trade union movement that got us out.
In 1972, there was a mass strike wave. I think 1972 was the high spot, and I would put it equivalent to the period, the so-called Great Unrest between 1910 and 1914. There were work-ins in Upper Clyde shipbuilders, Bryant colour printers, Plessis and so on, but there were also national strikes, like, for example, the miners' strike and, of course, the building workers' strike. Now, they weren't unofficial strikes. These were national strikes supported by their national leadership.
You can ask the police, and I'm quite sure they will confirm what I'm saying. There is no lorry gone through here today. I'm not telling you any lies.
No lies.
At all. And I'm assure you, if you turn around at this picket line, the lads will respect you and will be delighted with you. Will you do that?
We're self-employed, so we can join the union.
The gates will not be open again.
A sinister network of state agencies, secret bosses' organisations and private armies sprang up to combat communist and left-wing influence. A microphone was even found embedded in the walls of the party headquarters in King Street.
Just to show you a sort of cross-section, here we have a flying club with 25 excellent pilots and, of course, light aircraft for communication purposes. Here we have from Reading a merchant banker who's had previous intelligence experience.
When Sir Walter Walker, as the late Commander-in-Chief of the NATO Army and who knew about what communism was attempting to do, not only in Russia, but in this country too, when he raised the warning for the first time, from all over the country and from every walk of life, people have written in and have asked what they can do. I have become one of the people who is coordinating their activities, and all we have advised them to do is to register their names if they have any skills that be any use to the government in power.
I believe that the Parliament has been very slow to admit to the nation the influence and the effect that the left-wing activists have had on legislation. You don't have to go much further than pointing out.
Who do you call left-wing activists? Can we be a bit more specific?
I think you've got probably a very good example there. I won't say exactly licking his chops, but not far off it. Mr. Comrade Gill there, at the extreme left of this table. I believe that they are responsible for the momentum today going towards a situation of anarchy. I believe that all the leaders in Parliament, whatever party, are tending to ignore the threat to the Constitution and our Parliament. And I believe it is time for the Burke's good men to stand up and do something about it.
Well, there you are, Mr. Gill. You're one of the bogeymen. You are a communist, and the first communist to, I think, serve on the TUC General Council for 13 years. You also stood up and opposed the social contract. Now, where, if anywhere, do you see a danger to democracy?
Well, I think that if one examined history, and particularly the history since the Second World War, one can only come to the conclusion that the threat to democracy comes from the extreme right. I don't believe our friends over here are concerned about democracy. What I think they're worried about is the fact that present-day capitalism seems to be incapable of dealing with its own problems, and those people who have lived as a privileged section of the community are in danger of losing their privileges. And what concerns me is that the sort of things that they're beginning to do bring back memories of what has happened in other countries, which has produced the most horrifying phenomena, and terrible things happen to ordinary working people as a result. I mean, you take Chile or Greece as perfect examples of what happens when people who should have retired from military service think they can resolve the problems of society by going back and being soldiers again.
Eventually, a national miners' strike brought down the Tory government of Edward Heath in 1974, with communists providing much of the leadership in the coalfields.
If the miners are successful, then the whole labour and trade union movement in Britain will also be successful in defeating the reactionary policy of this reactionary Tory government.
And the miners also feel that there is an historical responsibility placed on them right now. And we are proud as miners to be in the front of the struggle. And we believe that if any section of the working class is going to break through, then the miners can break through the phase 3 and all that phase 3 means. And of course, once the miners have broken through, then the rest of the working class will come through. And the miners are in the front, and the miners are proud to be in the front. And that, in my opinion, is the place where the miners should be.